Now, I welcome all the participants to the session on Introduction to CFD. So first we'll start with Introduction to Real World Situations. Then I will come on Introduction to CFD. There we will first start with the understanding of the fundamental laws, subsidiary laws, and then meaning of individual term in the Navier-Stokes equation and their solution. Then as a part of the solution of the individual term of the Navier-Stokes equation, we will discuss some of the code doublets in our laboratory. So I will take over the session now. So first we start with the introduction to real world situations. They will try to understand the modern meaning of CFD. I'll introduce you some of the real world situations. First, we have like evaporation problem. If you'll observe, the droplet is evaporating on a leaf, which is earlier resting on it, and then this animation has been created with the use of high-speed camera, and we have to spend a lots of expenditure on high-speed camera to capture this animation. And the same problem we can solve in the CFD tools, and almost same kind of animation can be created. I would like to mention here that if we have to reveal the physics from a real world situation, then we need very high costly high speed cameras, zooming lenses, and then we are able to only capture the animation. And then we have to understand from our fundamentals that what will be the physics involved in it. So where CFD can play a substantial role to reveal the physics involved in the most of the heat transfer and fluid dynamics problems. So second, I will discuss about the Koffing effect, which is also concerned with the droplet drying when it has some sediments and around particles. Then you will see, and you also has observed sometime when you put one cup of uh, tea on or coffee on a table, then you will see the one kind of ring has been found after that. So science which is inside can be revealed with the help of CFD. And let's see, this is again the animation of the droplet evaporating. We can see how the different colors are introduced in the animation, and we can guess from there the majority of the molecules may be circulating around the where we have the high contours or the high intensity of the color. So it is representing you there will be some agitation of the molecules, and there will be some circulation takes place inside. And because of this such kind of offering effect we have, because as the liquid evaporates, fluid flow outwards from the middle of the droplet to its edges and carry particles to the edges. So at present, CFD is applicable in almost all the areas of fluid dynamics and heat transfer, I should say it. And we can reveal so many of the uh, we can reveal the deeper physics which is involved in the real world situations. So in upcoming slide, let's say we are taking another field of where CFD is fully applicable in microchannels. So we can see this is the one of the common practice in the most of the chemical and biomedical industries, where we need one chemical or some liquid proportion repeatedly. So what we have designed, we have one microchannel, and from one side we are allowing one fluid to flow inside, and using the another fluid which having a different phase compared to first one, and we can see it can separate the liquid and provide the repeated fractions. But to have this animation, again we need high-speed camera and zooming lenses. Then we can see it because the scale is actually the micro. So same kind of animation we can also generate in the micro channel, although there we can reveal more physics which is involved related to the fluid dynamics and heat transfer. So multi-phase, we have the multi-phase problems also. Let's say a droplet is falling in a water pool and there is a pitching of the droplet. So same kind of problem can also be solved in our CFD tools at present, and we can have the perfect results which are analogous to the real world situation. I'm playing another video where by using some source open sources like OpenFOAM, we have we can generate such kind of animations. So in the field of multi-phase also we have the various problems like filling of a dam. Then this problem can also be well tackled by the CFD tools at present. So if we have the information of the field, then how much time it will take to fill the tank, or which of the area will have the more drag due to the fluid of flow or mixing of the fluid, then it will be uh, and also it can provide us with some many time optimal results. We can change the designs according to our design. So the another area where it is fully applicable, which is the phase change. So first I will show you one real situation, melting of PCM, which is again created with the use of high-speed camera. You can see the wax is melting in a scare box. So if I show you the animation which is generated in a CFD tool, you will find analogous a front or melting front has been generated. But what will the use of CFD for uh, how CFD will be or CFD tool and this result will be beneficial for us? That we will do from another video on the same. You can see from CFD we can see the streamlines, velocity vectors also. So we can see in this particular region due to the gravity, due to the density difference, uh, the molecules of less density are coming on the top surface, and because of that circulation is going on, and also the gravity is playing the effect here, and you are able to reveal this particular physics. And let's say this wall is a heated one, so heat is carried by these molecules. The molecules are here also transferring the momentum as well as the heat. So such kind of things can be built by using the CFD tools that can give the more meaning to your real world situations. So at present, we can also implement CFD in the ports media flow, and you can see the how much of the penetration to a particular ports media. This can be useful in the dam structures also, and various in heat transfer fluid dynamics problems where we are using ports media to enhance the convection. Okay, it is fully applicable at present in the turbo machinery. You can optimize the blade angles, and in aerodynamics industry, where we want to know how much of the drag will be there for a particular design of a vehicle. So what is required actually in experimentation? We have to create the big wind tunnels, and there we have to use some fumes or smokes. We have to identify the streamlines, but this is very costly procedure. We have to create a very big ducts. So this can be easily handled. Okay. So this is a general common practice for in most of the automobile industries where they are checking the drags. So this can be very easily in your lab can be done by using the CFD tools. So here I'm showing you the animation for the different pictures of the car which are shown here, and you can see we can identify by using the CFD tools how much of the drag reduction will be there for this particular aerodynamics of the vehicle. Not limited to these fields, it is fully applicable at present in the electronic industries where we have the various single designs, microchips that has to be cooled on because there is a huge generation of heat in the circuits. And at this particular scale, there will be also micro scale will be involved. We have the huge surface area compared to the volume, and the huge generation of the heat is there. So you know already your electronic systems and also your like laptops also has to be cooled down. So for that we have to design various channels. So it is also fully applicable there. So a part of this we have the hydrodynamics, we have the submarines, ships. So for that also we can carry out our CFD solutions. From there, we can see how much the drag reduction will be there, because obviously the surfaces has to be make a contact with the water. They will be use drag on the surfaces. So this must be the shape must be completely hydrodynamic. That sense we have already from the airfoil shapes, and the motivation is from the fishes. So I'm showing you one video here also, which is indicating you how at present now CFDs up to what extent it can be applicable. We call it as a fluid structure interaction. There at present various fish-like locomotives has been designed. Submarines designs has been now at present on the ship of the fishes. They are studying the various species of the fishes which are pitching or heaving and implementing in their designs. Okay, not limited to these fields. CFD at present, I should say, fully applicable to almost all fluid dynamics and heat transfer problems. Now we'll start the session with Introduction to Computational Fluid Dynamics. There first we'll try to understand the fundamental laws and subsidiary laws and the meaning of individual term of the Navier-Stokes equation and their solution. So I already mentioned that as a part of the solution of Navier-Stokes equation and individual term, I will also discuss some of the codes which are developed here. So this will be the content that I will discuss. So prerequisite for the CFD is actually is mathematics, mainly the numerical methods, then fluid mechanics, and then heat transfer. There are some of the recommended books. I generally prefer the book by Professor Atul Sharma, uh, and the title of the book is Introduction to Computational Fluid Dynamics: Development, Application, and Analysis. Who are actually interested in the development of their own codes for their problems, physical problems, then they must. I must recommend this book for them. And you all know one of the significant contributor, Aspar Thankar, who has developed the simple algorithm, which is fully applicable at present in the commercial CFD tools. And his book is Numerical Heat Transfer and Fluid Flow. So this is also first two are the highly recommended books for FVM. Uh, and if you are working in FDM for a very simple problems, then you must follow D. Anderson, Computational Fluid Mechanics and Heat Transfer. The earlier two are mainly for FVM technique. So first we start with the introduction of heat transfer. They will recapitulate some mode of the heat transfer. I will take very less time to complete this all, as you already know uh, what this introduction basic things about the heat transfer. And then we have the law of conservation of energy, governing equation, and boundary condition for conduction, diffusion, advection, and convection phenomena. This is really important: diffusion, advection, and convection phenomena to understand type of convection heat transfer and heat transport mechanisms. So conduction we already know, energy transfer due to the random molecular motion. We also call it diffusion, and convection. In addition to energy transfer by diffusion, energy is also transferred by bulk or microscopic motion of the fluid. So here it is one word is written, which is addition to energy. It means convection is a sum of your diffusion as well as one additional term, which will be the heat transport or energy transport by the bulk or microscopic motion. And then the third mode is radiation, energy emitted by the matter that is at a finite temperature. So first we start with our fundamental law, which is the law of conservation of energy. And from there we derive the energy equation. First we'll try to understand it for the conduction. Conduction, I should say this particularly is for the solid. So as per the definition is rate of change of internal energy of the solid inside the control volume will be equal to rate at which heat energy enters the control volume, inflow outflow by conduction heat transfer plus heat gained by volumetric heat generation. If you remember your thermodynamic definition, then it will be like energy in minus energy out plus generated will be rate of change of the internal energy of the system. On the basis of same, it is now designed for the control volume, which will later take a different form while we apply the energy equation for the fluid flow problem as well. It is represented here for the solid. And we have the various okay, now I should mention we all know that this is the second uh, two-dimensional diffusion equation. And let me tell you the meaning of individual term here. The first one is the temporal term. This one is the flux term. This is the volumetric term. The first term is the temporal term because it will depend upon the time. It will give you the transient result of for the temperature with respect to time, and need one initial condition to be solved. And this one is the flux term. We know that, and it required boundary conditions to be solved. I'm saying flux term. They will be applicable only at the surface, and this is the volumetric heat generation, means inside the volume. So we have three different types of boundary conditions, which is very, very important to understand. The first one is a Dirichlet boundary condition, where we apply the boundary condition in the form of a temperature directly. And then we have the Newman boundary condition, where we apply one gradient normal to the phase. Here n means normal to the phase. And then we have third one is a Robin or mixed boundary condition, which is the combination of the first two. Let me tell you here. On the, let's say we have one plate, which is at a higher temperature on its left side. So there we have applied, and this temperature is known to us. There I have applied the Dirichlet boundary condition. And let's say there is insulation, the plate is insulated from the bottom. So there I have to provide the gradient, and the gradient must be zero. So it will be, I'm saying that that gradient will be always normal to the surface. It will be del T by del Y, that will be equal to zero. And let's say we have heat flux on the right side of the plate. So there I have to make gradient equal to the heat flux. And let's say on the top surface we have convection also. The top wall is convecting with the surrounding air at the ambient temperature T infinity. So there we have to form one Robin or mixed boundary condition. So which takes this form like, and I have to create a one balance here, conduction equal to convection. From there I can write this K the dt by dy equal to H T minus T infinity. That will be solved for temperature, and by using some of the discretization technique, this will be finally linearized, because at present is in differential form. To make it a algebraic equation, we have to solve it using some of the techniques, and then this particular form is known as mixed or Robin boundary condition. So now I will try to understand the meaning of conduction or diffusion, I should say. Let's say you are sitting between the ice and the fire at equal distances, and as already mentioned, the diffusion is a heat transport mechanism due to the random motion of the molecules. And there is a no flow condition. A random motion, it means if you're talking about the solids, because the random motion of the molecules, heat is transported inside the solids also. And I should not say this is only valid for the solid. Also, in the fluids, this is also valid. But there must be no flow condition. Bulk movement should not be there. So what you will experience? You will experience molecules will randomly take the motion and carry some of the coolness to you, and also the hotness. You will feel the both of the effects in case of diffusion. In case of advection, there will be bulk movement of the molecules. Means I must say that there is a high wind speed, and then only you will have only one effect. Let's say the wind is flowing from left to right, then you will only have the ice effect. You will only feel the coldness. If wind is from the right side to the left side, then you will only face the hotness, because there will be bulk movement of the molecules. They will not allow random motion of the molecules to carry the effect in the opposite direction, which can be possible in the diffusion. Okay, and finally the convection. In convection, you will have the both effects, advection as well as diffusion. The velocity should not be that much high. I must mention one is very simple example for our graduate level. Let's say the air is flowing over a hot plate, then you know that the thermal boundary layer will form, or analogous to the hydrodynamic boundary layer. So inside the boundary layer, you know the velocity will be very less and the following one gradient toward the center, toward the center. And beyond the boundary layer, we have the uh, bulk motion of the fluid. So this is the this particular problem is analogous to the convection problem. Inside the boundary layer, where we have the very less velocity, there mainly the diffusion phenomena will transport the heat, and that heat will be carried away by the bulk fluid over the boundary layer, and combinedly presenting you one convection problem. So convection, we have like forced convection, free convection, mixed convection. Forced convection indicating you advection as a phenomena, free convection showing you the diffusion as phenomena, then mixed where we have the both of the effects. So molecular transport generally it will use through diffusion or advection. But we in a generalized way we rarely have the advection, pure advection as a problem. We generally existing convection as a problem. Introduction to fluid dynamics. First, we try to understand the conservation laws and the governing equations, initial boundary conditions, or flow type. So the basis that we set for the Navier-Stokes equation uh, related to the momentum transport, which comes from the law of conservation of mass. Uh, yes. So first continuity equation is derived, which is on the basis of rate of change of mass inside the control volume is zero, and rate at which fluid enters the control volume, inflow outflow must be zero. That means that whatever the mass is coming entering from the control surface to the control volume, same mass has to leave the control volume. That means mass is conserved. Then we have the law of conservation of momentum that set the basis for the momentum equation, which is the rate of change of momentum of the fluid inside the control volume, and momentum rate at which the fluid leaves the control volume will be equal to surface forces plus body forces. This is really important to understand. Rate of change of momentum of the fluid inside the control volume. Uh, I think you all had derived the Navier-Stokes equations in your graduate level. So this first term will give you the unstudied term and as well as advection term, and then from the second term momentum rate at which fluid leaves the control volume give you the diffusion term for the momentum equation, and then we have the surface forces, pressure and viscous forces, and body forces. Likewise, while energy equation will be applied to the fluid flow problem, then rate of change of internal energy of the fluid inside the control volume plus enthalpy rate at which the fluid leaves the control volume. This is the additional term uh, in comparison to the while this energy equation will be applicable to the solids. Here enthalpy rate will be at which the fluid leaves the control volume must be added, because there will be some fluid flow and the flow also come with a particular energy. There will be some fluid flow energy associated with the fluid to make the fluid flow inside. That will generally in from the basic thermodynamics generally count that in the enthalpy form, which is the energy associated with the fluid for to make the fluid flow, will be equal to rate at which the heat energy enters the control volume by conduction heat transfer plus heat gained by the volumetric heat generation. So we can also present them combinedly to make the better understanding of energy and momentum equation, so that we can also remember them and they will be differentiated term by term. So first will be the unstudied term, that will be rate of change of internal energy or momentum of the fluid inside the control volume plus rate at which heat or momentum leaves by advection transport, means this particularly by the bulk fluid motion, and rate at which heat or momentum enters by molecular transport plus source terms. We must understand the source terms in the momentum equation will be the body forces, there will be the pressure forces and the viscous forces, and in energy equation it will be the volumetric heat generation. And you must remember the source terms will be the volumetric terms. And the heat transport by the advection as well as diffusion, they will be the flux terms. Means they will be, this particular terms will be applicable on the boundaries, on the surfaces. The source terms will be inside the control volume. So this is the generalized form of the Navier-Stokes equation. We also call them the governing equations. Here I have presented the two-dimensional Navier-Stokes equation. First one is the continuity equation, and second one the momentum equation in x and y, and energy equation. So if you try to understand, this is the generalized form where I'm using c and phi, and uh, phi is the general term I'm using, where it will be u and v for the momentum equation and t for the energy equation. Where we are using the sources you already know. For the momentum equation, it will be the pressure forces, and this Q will be for the energy equation. And C will be 1 and Cp. 1 is case of the momentum equation, Cp will be in case of energy equation. This delta will be replaced with the mu and k for momentum and energy equation. So in general, the first term in the Navier-Stokes equation, we call it unsteady term. That is a temporal term which keeps the track of the various parameters. For momentum, it will be the field variable, I should say. It will be the velocity. For energy, it will be the temperature. So it will give the track of these parameters with respect to the time. And the second one, we call it as advection. So this particular advection is showing you the bulk movement. It will be important to capture the bulk movement during the column of the fluid flow and the heat transfer simultaneously. And then third term will be called as a diffusion term. We call this as a diffusion term. Here the, even though in the momentum equation also, okay, uh, momentum will be transported due to the random motion of the molecules. Likewise, here in the energy equation also, the heat transport will be due to the random motion. So this diffusion term will be taking the track of that kind of transport. And finally, we have the source terms. Source terms here for momentum equation will be the pressure or viscous forces, and for energy equation, it will be the volumetric heat generation. So you must remember, first term is the unsteady, second one is the advection, third one will be the diffusion, and finally will be the source term. And now we will go for the solution of individual term. But before that, I will discuss the initial and boundary conditions, which is here I am going to discuss one problem which is involving heat transfer and fluid flow as well. So let's say we have to analyze the fluid flow over a solid cylinder, but that solid cylinder at a particular temperature due to some volumetric heat generation. And you know, for the fluid dynamics aspect, we have the no slip boundary condition where fluid is interacting with the solid surface because the no because of the shear. And in order to take this as a problem or make it as a computational domain in a Safety tool, we have to create one rectangular domain outside the solid cylinder. There we have to initiate the fluid flow, and then we will have the streamlines or fluid dynamics over the across this channel also or across this solid cylinder. So what will the boundary conditions now we have? We will have the combination of Newman and Dirichlet boundary conditions. Let's say at the inlet of this rectangular channel, what are required? You know, we have to insert the momentum equation, we have to insert the energy equation. Okay, what is required for momentum equation? We must provide some velocity of the fluid. Okay, so here we are considering only the x component, and in the y component we are not considering the velocity, and because the direction of the fluid is only in the x direction, and then uh, the fluid which is entering is initially at a temperature equal to the ambient temperature, and it is entering inside the channel from this control surface, and then here exists some further boundary conditions, no slip boundary condition. For no slip boundary condition, we must have to provide the gradient in the y direction equal to 0, and temperature gradient for insulation wall as a 0. and at the outlet there will also no gradient that will exist. So we will make them del u by del x equal to 0, del v by del x equal to 0, and del t by del x equal to 0. So we have the external internal flow problems and the flow across the cylinder inner channel. They are generalized form of the problems in fluid dynamics. So computational fluid dynamics, uh, as per, if you remember the earlier slides where we interact with the real world situation, then as per the modern definition of the computational fluid dynamics, I should say, it is like a tool analogous to a video making camera that can reveal the physics involved in a fluid dynamics and heat transfer problems. And the conventional definition of the CFD, as you all know, which is the numerical way to solve the heat transfer and fluid dynamics problems. And let's see here, the CFD is a methodology for computer simulation of fluid mechanics and heat transfer problems. The simulation result in prediction of the flow field and engineering parameters, which are very useful in the design and optimization of the process and equipment. At present, almost every R&D lab may be using the CFD tools for their designing of their various devices or equipment, or to particularly change a particular process to make it more efficient. They will be doing the R&D using the various softwares. So at present, CFD has integrated with the CAD softwares and commonly known as CAE tools, because in industry or in real world situations, we generally have to deal with the complex problem where we have the various geometries involved. Let's say we have the rectangular as well as circle geometry will be involved, that will be called as uh, a complex geometry where we have the involvement of the two coordinate systems. So we have very complex problem that we have to deal with at present, and they can be solved uh, by having the computational facility in R&D labs for for the designing and optimization of the processes and equipment. So CFD actually also reduces the time and cost of designing and analyzing engineering system, and is slowly becoming part or parcel of the computer-aided engineering, because it also save the expenditure and the experimentation cost and the time that has to spend on the experiments. If repeatability is required in the system, then many times it is not possible to change the design again and again in the during the experimentation, or that also led to different errors during the experimentation. So CFD is one of the fantastic way to deal with the where we have to obtain the geometrical optimization, or many times when geometrical and flow parameter has to be optimized, and this is one of the powerful tool. So it is completely at present applicable in the various fields of the engineering and the industry. So in general, we have the theoretical methods. We have the four types of theoretical methods, but two most popularly we are using analytical solution and numerical solution procedures. And in numerical solution, which are the approximate way to get the solution. Analytical, we have the exact solution, but they will be continuous. And in numerical, we have the discrete solution as well. So what numerical solution involve? They involve the governing equations, then initial and boundary conditions, grid generation. That grid generation will be like discretization of the continuous domain to certain grid point in the domain. Okay, what actually we do, we earlier have one computational domain that will be first analyzed as per the viewpoint of the control volume, and then your actual problem, your physical domain has to be analyzed well to convert it to the computational domain, and then computational domain has to be converted to the small control volumes further, that we generally call the grid. The grid generation is actually nothing but involves all the knowledge from your mathematics. We have to divide the control volume so that we can transfer the physics from one end to another end, or one edge to another edge, one phase to another phase. So discretization converts the differential equations to a set of linear algebraic equations. Okay, I will try to reveal this properly in my upcoming slides, because from the discretization we also connect our physical uh, problem with the computational problem, and as well as we understand it from mathematical viewpoint as well as from the physical viewpoint. And then solution methodology solves a set of equations by an iterative method using algorithm. So numerical method introduction, we have the two types. One is the direct method, one other is the iterative method. So in direct method, like the Gauss elimination method, we can directly get the solution from the by applying a algorithm. In iterative procedure, we have to first guess the value, and then accordingly we will have the solution if hopefully convergence is achieved in the solution. So CFD is actually involved most of the time on commercial software's iterative methods. And then discretization, continuous problem is converted to into discrete problem to obtain approximate solution. Okay. So there are various errors are involved in the numerical methods. There will be machine error, then round off error, overflow, underflow, and then discretization error. Okay. Now we'll come on the physics-based finite volume method. So what RJ we are following, but we are generally analyzing one physical domain, making it to a computational domain on the basis of a control volume hypothesis, and then generating algebraic or partial differential equations, and then applying the finite volume method to make them linearize and generating the algebraic equations. Now, at present, which is the present FVR method, we can directly from a control volume can derive the discretized algebraic equations. So types of CFD problems we have like single flow, multi-fluid boundary, and the particulate and granular. So grid generation, this is really important. We have the structured grid method, algebraic method, and elliptical partial differential equation method to generate the grid in the computational domains. Why grid is actually needed? The grid designates the cell or element on which flow is actually solved. Grid is a discrete representation of the geometry of the problem and has cell grouped into boundary zones where boundary conditions are applied. You must understand while you have created one computational domain, and then it must be divided into small computational domains further to transfer the physics. Okay, this is the understanding from the physics side. From mathematical side, for each control volume, you have to solve one governing equation, and that give you, as per the number of grids you have in a computational domain, that give you that much number of algebraic equations. So that has to be finally solved by using some iterative solution. So grid also provide you one platform where you can understand your physical problem as well as your computational problem, both from physical understanding as well from the mathematical understanding. So from the commercial viewpoint, we first have to create the geometry, and also if you are coding then by using your coordinates, you have to generate the geometry. But generally we deal with the complex problems, and then we have to use some CAD softwares at present to create the geometry, complex geometry. We generally call also the simple geometry or complex geometry. In simple geometry, where only the one coordinate system will be involved, we call that the simple geometry. While we have the combination of more than two coordinate systems, then we call it as a complex geometry. Then various types of uh, grids we have available in CFD. For 2D problems, they are triangle and quadrilaterals. We also call them tri or quad. And for 3D, we have the various types of I should say many type of shell shapes which are available. They can be tetrahedron, that we call them. Then prism with quadrilateral base, hexahedron we call them. And then pyramids, then prism with triangular base, wedge we call them. Then arbitrary polyhedrons. So in order to support the complex geometry and provide and divide the computational domain into small control volumes as per the physical understanding from mathematical understanding. So to provide the grid everywhere in the complex geometry, these type of various cell shapes or grid shapes has been generated in 3D. So what we call cell, this particularly is known as a grid. I should say this is a cell. Cell is also particularly known as a grid. And then it is a combination of lines that finally create this cell or grid. And where two lines are meeting, we call that a node. And for a 2D, this particular line will be the edge and face also. And at the center, because FVM has to be provide the average solution at the center, so we call it as a cell center or grid point also. For 3D, this will be as per the three coordinates. Then we have multi-block. In multi-block, what we'll do, we'll divide the domain by splitting the faces and adding the extra edges to to uh, create the grids actually. So this is particularly required where we have the symmetric surfaces there we can perfectly create a structured grid. And then we have, if another coordinate system has been involved, means we have the complexity involved somewhere, then we can split that from the symmetric faces and provide the mesh according to the shape. So there another term which is important to understand in the grid generation, which is structured or unstructured. So structured grid, while we have the orthogonality in the grid, or we should say quadrilaterals are forming there. So that will be recognized as a structure grid. Here you can see, although we have one solid, one circular hole here, whenever we have created the quadrilaters around, and they will be recognized as a structure grid. And this is here pure orthogonal grids, means between the two lines they are making 90-degree angle, so they are perfect structures. And this all is known as structured grid. And this is the one of the form of unstructured grid where we have to use tetrahedrons, polyhedrons in order to provide the grid everywhere in a complex domain. So another important term here is hybrid. So hybridization is also created in the during the meshing, while we have to create the grids for complex geometries for a particularly where for a fluid flow problem, let's say you want to check the aerodynamics, then over it we can create the structure grid also. After that, we can allow to form the tetrahedrons and yeah. So this is particularly while two or different type of grids we are using, we call them the hybrid grid. And they generally, while two different type of grid structures will form, and then there will be some time mesh can be conformal or non-conformal. That means that uh, two ends of the two generated meshes are not meeting with each other. So there will be introduction of the error because of that, because physics will not be transported from one to another cell. So we also have the zonal hybrid mesh for a particular zone. If you want to make it a coarse or want to make it a fine, then accordingly by phase splitting or different ways, you can provide the more dense mesh somewhere. So that will be the zonal hybrid mesh, and take the mesh accordingly also. Let's say here you can see here will be maybe the tetrahedrons, and here perfect structured grid has been created. So this is actually the hybrid mesh, and as per the zone, so zonal hybrid mesh. Then you must ensure the mesh quality, so that can be checked by using the skewness, smoothness, and aspect ratio. So skewness is generally we say when we are creating a particular type of grid. Let's say the structure or unstructured mesh you have created for your problem, and then you must compare it with the standard one. Let's say everywhere you have created the quadrilateral mesh, then you must ensure that whether they are orthogonal or not, or if they are not following the orthogonality, then how much of deviation is there compared to the standard one. So that is particularly the skewness. So it must be near to the one, and it must be near to the zero. And then we have the smoothness. If you are going to change the size as per the requirement, let's say there is a fluid flow over a flat plate, and then boundary layer will be created. You have to capture the transition of the fluid nearly to the boundary, near to the where fluid is interacting with the solid surface. Then it will be gradually increasing toward the center. So that change that must be smooth, means it must be less than 20% compared to the earlier one. The size of the next grid must should be less than 20% change as per the earlier one. And aspect ratio, while we see what is the largest element length compared to the smallest, then it must be divided with each other. It should be equal to 1 almost. So they are the criteria generally opted to check the mesh quality. So there are various formulas also. Let's say what I'm saying for this skewness. Let's say this is one of the optimal equilateral cell that should be created, but actually what you have generated during the meshing, okay, this has been created. Then it must be compared with the uh, optimal cell. So how much deviation is there, that will indicate you the skewness. So likewise, for a structured mesh, let's say this has been created, but it should be orthogonal. Perfect 90-degree angle should be there. So how much deviation is there? That is the skewness for the structured mesh or equilateral, and this is particularly implementable for your triangles and tetrahedron. So okay, so second is the aspect ratio. Let's say this has been created, so you know all the sides for the perfect square will be the same. Then aspect ratio should be 1. But let's say such kind of structured mesh has been created. Okay, this having very almost about 20% of the larger length. So aspect ratio will not be equal to 1. So for triangular also, each side will be same. So let's say this has been created during your machine. So you must check the aspect ratio. If it is near to 1, then it is excellent. For skewness particularly, this table will be followed. So while we check in your commercial software like NC, we will check the skewness, then such kind of ranges will be given for your mesh quality. Then you can see for skewness, if it is 0 to 0.25, then it will be recommended as a, it will be recognized as excellent. Then 0 to 2.5, 0.25 to 0.5, it will be recognized as good. Then 0.5 to 0.8 is acceptable. After, beyond that, we should not carry out the simulations with that generated mesh. So mesh also has to be changed according to the flow problem. Let's say flow over a flat plate, then you know you also have to capture the velocity gradient in the y direction. Then this will be the better way to represent the mesh there. Means you must provide some clustering near to the wall. So there will be some errors in the solution due to, if mesh is too coarse, then high skewness will be there, large aspect ratio will be there, large jumps in the volume between adjacent cell, means smoothness, there must be smoothness. Change from earlier grid size to next grid size should be less than 20%. Or inappropriate boundary layer mesh. Or if mesh will be non-conformal, then also that will be the source of error in the generated mesh. And also, while you want the high resolution for such kind of problems to capture this, let's say, flow over this scare, or I should say, bluff body. So this transition or this particular contour can only be captured if mesh will be perfectly fine in this particular region. So what should be the mesh size? What should be the grid size? This also really matters and can add the error due to simulation of such problems. Okay, before to go to the next, I must mention that which is really important. Okay, the actual another meaning of this grid is, let's say if we have boundary condition here, if you are able to follow, are you able to see my cursor? Yes, I think. Okay, let's say if on this particular wall we have given the boundary condition about the velocity of the fluid or the temperature of the fluid, then this grid, this particularly will first solve for these uh, border nodes or border grids. This particularly will be, this value will be interpreted to the next grid, to the next grid, to the next grid. Then finally we'll have the solution up to this end. So if energy will be there in the generation of the grid, then physics will not be properly transported to the next grid, and there will be some error. Like say near to the wall, near to the wall, if you are creating such kind of grid, then this value first will be calculated as per the boundary condition which will be given at the plate for the velocity. Let's say also for the temperature, if there will be hot plate as a case, and then this uh, value first will be calculated for this grid. This will be interpreted to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. If this inadequate mesh size will be there, then physics will not be properly transported, because there will be shear also, and that must be properly encountered. So mesh size is very important, and this is also the meaning of grid. It generally interpolates the value to the next, to the next, to the next level, and then finally you have the solution. Let's say for flow direction, if you have you are using one UDF here, which is giving you the fully double flow inside, then this kind of mesh should be generated as inlet, and then slowly it will be gradually increased, and then this gradual increase is less than 20%, let's say. Then it will be further where we don't have the much of the effect of the fluid dynamics, then it can be increased further in order to reduce the overall size of the mesh. Because if very fine size of the mesh will be there, then it also takes the high computation. So now I will go to the uh, how mesh can be generated for your code. So there we are using some transformation equation and inverse transformation equations. So we have xi and zeta two function which are created as a function of x and y coordinates, and they will be inverse transformed for x. Now xi and zeta are created as a function for x or y, and then we have two methods. One is algebraic and second one is the partial differential equation. To design your computation domain and provide the various numerical values during the code development, so that you can create various lines through that coordinates, and you can see there is a mesh in your computation domain. So for that particular distribution of the coordinates, we need some functions that can equally or due to at a particular change can provide the coordinates in your computation domain. So let's say first we have one square plate. Okay, it will be very easy for everyone to create a structural mesh for this problem. This is one of the very basic geometry or simple geometry. We have a equal length of each of the uh, uh, element in the x and y direction, and then xi and zeta has been provided here, which is showing the distance between the two grids, between the two nodes, or you can say the length of your element of the grid. And we can create a mesh by providing horizontal and vertical lines in this particular computational domain, and you can have the grid for that. But let's say while you have one of the let's say left side of the plate is at a different length, which is a shorter length compared to the uh, length of the plate on the right side, then how you can create the grid? So for that, what you have to do, we have to use the transformation functions and then generate one equation that can distribute the nodes and create these, provide the values for these vertices. Let's say if you have to create one line, let's say this line and this line also, then they must provide some coordinates with respect to x or y. Then the I and zeta will provide you the values accordingly. They will be changing according to your computational domain and providing the same number of nodes. Let's say you want to provide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nodes in this vertical direction. Here also the same in the number. Then equilaterals will be formed, but they will not be perfect orthogonal sometimes. Okay. Then this transformation can be provided via using the transformation function. And where we have the conventional or very simple geometry where each of the face is same, then it is very easy to provide the coordinates. If this is a length of 1 meter, and then we can divide the 1 meter in let's say we should have the 6 grids for this domain. Then one can be divided in a equal fraction for the 6, and you will able to know delta xi and delta zeta, uh, which can finally give you the coordinates which will be at a equidistance or equidistant coordinates, where from there you can draw on the various horizontal and vertical lines. So transformation and inverse transformation also has been created for a tuning factor beta for clustering purpose. Let's say earlier we have discussed, let's say flow over a flat plate, then clustering is required, fine grid structure is required near to the wall. Then they are the equations which is derived. For there, the information of your x or y coordinate is required. For this particularly, x or y coordinate is required, and then beta as a function is used, whose value will change the grid accordingly. Let's say in a particular domain you have 30 by 30 as a mesh, means 30 nodes in the x direction, 30 nodes in the y direction, then beta will create a cluster of that. Number of nodes will be remain same, number of division will remain same, number of grid will remain same, but their size will different accordingly. Okay, if you'll take the value of beta as 1.2, then they will be fine mesh near to the this bottom wall will be created. If I reducing it making it 1.05, you can see the fine grid will be created and the upper grids will be stretched accordingly. And then also they will be further created by making a function of h also. And then you can see now I will use beta for these equations. Then you can see the clustering near to the top and bottom wall will be created. If I'm using the beta as 1.05, more fine grid is created near to the this wall. As like say this is a flow through a channel, then boundary layer will be created on the top and bottom wall as well. So for this channel, we need fine grid size near to the top and bottom wall. So they are actually the functions which are generally used by your commercial software also to provide the clustering in your during your meshing. So this transformation also further can provide the clustering uh, according to a particular region where we need the fine mesh. Let's say we want the fine grid at the center of this domain, and then by using this transformation function, I'm saying that they are the transformation which is used in your commercial softwares to create the grids. And likewise, you have like uh, okay. So by providing the value of beta and making another factor d, which is taking the value in the vertical direction, then accordingly this clustering can be shifted in the y direction, and it can be make for d h by 2 at the center, and accordingly for different value of beta different grid structure will be created. It will become very fine at this particular at the center of this channel. So this all is generally solved by using these equations. So now this is the discrete representation of the domain. We call it also the grid generation. So this is actually as per your uh, code is concerned. We generally recognize the various grids for their location with as per the coordinate system like I or J. I representing the location this coordinate in the x direction and J is representing in the y direction. Then how to recognize the neighboring uh, cell centers, or I should say nodes, not the cell centers here. So for this, it will be I j plus one, and this the next one adjacent one will be I plus one comma j, I minus one comma j. Likewise, we recognize the various nodes for our computational domain, and this information is required while you have to create your own code, because code are generally on the basis of your matrices. So we have to create the matrix based on the I and j, and accordingly we have to provide the boundary conditions also. Let's say this plate is at a particular temperature on this wall, which is one of the boundary digital boundary condition for this problem. So this grid has to take the information, and that has to transform to the next to the next, to the next, to the next, then you're able to know what is the value at this particular wall due to this temperature. So the blue circles are generally called as the boundary grid points, and these yellows are generally known as border grid points, and also inner grid points. And accordingly, we can indicate them as per their location, uh, which are also in a code is creating the coordinates actually. Let's say uh, this particular plate have Imax, which Imax is representing the length in the x direction, and Jmax is representing the length in the y direction. And then we have delta I or delta x increment in the x direction, which is taking the difference between the two nodes here, likewise. So this grid location can be represented like this. For the boundary grid nodes in the x direction, it will be I1 from 1 to Imax to Imax. In the y direction, it will be for J1 to Jmax. So for this one, if you want to call, then it will be Jmax minus 1. For this one, it will be Imax minus 1. So this is actually the representation uh, to particularly to call a particular coordinate for a grid location, and is very important to recognize for the development of your code. And like say for this particular P point, I am saying it Ij. Ij will indicate me the coordinates with respect to x or y, and accordingly for the upper node I can recognize like Ij plus 1. This particular designation is important because your code work like this. And for this one, we can recognize it with the I plus 1 comma j. You know already for x it will be plus and y it will be a minus, and for x this will be the minus. On that basis, we have designed this whole system. Now, Taylor series expansion. So from the Taylor series, on the basis of Taylor series, you know we have derived our Navier-Stokes equation by taking this as a basis, and it is also really important, but kind of a formulation of the differential equations we have in the Navier-Stokes, and what each of the term may be representing, and what they can capture actually, what they have the ability to capture. So all you are aware with this Taylor series, for incremental uh, for increment in x direction, let's say delta x, let's say your control surface at x, and and one flux is applied there, or maybe the one mass is entering in the control volume at a location x, and then by taking a delta x increment in the x direction, let's say fluid is leaving the surface. On that basis, if you see, then f of x is representing the earlier location. We call it generally the first case, and then this is representation as a differential form, and then we have a first order differential equation here, and it has ability to capture the slope. Means let's say you have a pressure gradient, then we generally having the high pressure at the inlet and low pressure at the outlet, and then to capture the change or delta P pressure difference, then that can be generally recognized as del P by del X in the x direction or del P by del Y. So it indicating you that we having the first differential that can only give you one slope. And for a second order differential, if we have to capture the curvature, let's say you have to capture the boundary layer that may be following one parabolic path, then second order differential must be introduced in your equation. So likewise, you remember your momentum equation, it having the second order differential also for the velocity, and as well as the first order differential also. So they has to be limited according to your uh, physical domain. Means how much is the involvement of your physical domain as per the fluid dynamics concern. And their accuracy will also be depend. If we only consider the first term, then we have the inaccuracy in the solution. More accuracy will be added if you are keep on increasing the number of differential. If you are keep on increasing the order of the differential, like say second order to third order to the next level. So here it is represented here. For the second term, you can, for the first case, you can say we have the straight line which is not able to capture the slope or giving you the real value, and it is only on the basis of the first case. And then you can see for the second one straight line has been created like this from 1 to 3, and we call this generally as interpolation from one point to the another point. And then we have the second order differential which can give you the curvature. It is on the basis of the solution obtained from the Taylor series. So this is actually your Orr-Navier-Stokes equation also work like this, while they will be applicable on the grid structures. If in your equation first order differential will be there, your results, you must understand result will be one kind of slope. And if the second order differential will be involved, then there will be some curvature in the solution. And accordingly, your differential equations also they are elliptical, parabolic in the nature. So Taylor series expansion, from Taylor series expansion, on the basis of finite differencing, what we have two forms of the Taylor series. One is for the I should say upstream side, means if you want to take increment in x direction, then the first one will be used. Okay, if you want to go in the back direction, then second form of the Taylor series will be used, and then they will be solved for first order differential. For there we call it the first order forward difference. We will rearrange this equation for this particularly for the first term. Then they will be solved and rearranged, and this form will be obtained. So that will be for I plus 1 comma j, and by taking the value of the one of the initial cell center. Likewise, we have the okay. So remaining terms are generally known as here the function error. So they will be error. So error will be added into that particular solution. And this representation of this differential equation in this discretized form is representing you like, if this is the I, then forward difference method will take you from this I to the next I level. Like say you have one bar, and on the left side of the bar it is at 100 degrees Celsius. On the right side it is at 25 degrees Celsius. You want to see how much of the, for after a particular time, how much of the change will be in the along the length of the bar. Then you must take the increment by taking the I at the left end of the bar, and by taking the increment in the I direction. So let's say uh, for the backward, we have also the first order backward difference method. So that can be generated from the second equations, the second form of the Taylor equation, which we call the backward step. Like say this is the I, and if you want to move in this particular direction, let's say now the right end of the bar is at 100 degrees Celsius, and left end of the bar is at a 25 degrees Celsius, and then we want to see the temperature. So already gradient is from 100 to 25 degrees Celsius. So we must track it from the right to left side. So for there we must implement the backward difference. And there, these are the remaining terms also known as the tension error. So likewise, we have the second order central difference that can be obtained by summing up both of the equations for backward step or forward step. And now, if you see the differencing, it will representing you I plus 1 or I minus 1. So means it is not taking the value of the central one, only interpolating between I minus 1 to I plus 1. Likewise, we have the second order central second difference. So that will be applicable for your second order differential equations, and this is also known as forward difference. Oh, this is actually the central second difference, and what is it taking? It is taking the information of three nodes at the same time: I minus 1, I, and I plus 1. So while this form of your Taylor series will be solved for second order differential, then it takes this form, and this is generally known as second order accurate. So this differencing will be applicable now. Our differentials which arise in your Navier-Stokes equations and for their solution. So we have forward difference. We have forward difference. For that, we will have the, let's say, initial point. We will move in the positive direction. We will move one step forward. Then we have the backward differencing. We will move one step in the backward direction. And then we have the central. Then we will second order central difference. Then we are not taking the value of the central node and interpolating between two nodes, which is at I minus 1 or I plus 1. And which is the another one we have for the second order differential equation. Its discretization will be like this. We are taking the all the three cells, which is at I minus 1, I or I plus 1. So likewise, if you want to take the information about the corner nodes, then we must go for the partial differential equation. By solving it, then we can have the this solution, this form of the solution that can direct you for all the corner nodes. So except this, we also have a different type of grids, structure grids, I should say, O type, C type, and H type. So now I will move to the computational heat transfer and solution of conduction equation. So again, if you'll recapitulate, I already mentioned that for your numerical solution, what is required, governing equation must be there, and then we'll apply initial and boundary condition. Then grid generation will be there. We will discretize the continuous domain to the certain grid points in the domain. Then discretization converts the differential equations to set of linear algebra equation and solution methodology that solve the set of equation by an iterative method using an algorithm. I must mention that the grid is a mathematical representation, but also indicating the your control volume at the same time. And for the control volume, your algebra equations has to be applied, and grid is finally representing you for that particular location. We have calculated the value using that algebraic equation. So I'm mentioning it as like say if 100 grid you have created in your computational domain, then 100 number of algebraic equations will be formed, and they must solve to give the information for the computation whole of the computational domain by using some iterative solution procedure. So heat transport mechanism, we have diffusion and advection. So first we will start with our solution for a diffusion term in the energy equation. So we have the law of conservation of energy from there. We'll apply it for the by mistake this fluid. While you apply it for the solid, then rate of change of heat energy of the solid inside the control volume will be equal to rate at which heat energy enters the control volume inflow or flow by conduction heat transfer plus energy gained by volumetric heat generation. On the basis of that, this is the unsteady form of the diffusion equation we have, and steady state form of the energy equation we have. So that involves one temporal term, and if let's say this is a one-dimensional, then that delta is representing you uh, differential in x, y, and z direction. So accordingly, we can limit it. Let's say the three-dimensional, then three second-order differential equations as well. So let's say it is a one-dimensional diffusion equation. Means we're only counting heat transfer in a one direction, in the x direction. So, and there's no heat generation in the system. So this particular term has to be eliminated, and this gradient only has to be solved for x. And now this form we will have. So alpha is representing u k upon rho Cp, thermal diffusivity, and then we have the forward and backward and central differencing that we have seen earlier. That has to apply now. So here n is representing u the time time level. So this temporal turn has to be solved for time. So by applying the forward differencing method for this temporal term, we will have this form like n plus 1 and n. It is indicating you we are going to the next time level by having the information from our previous time level. And on the right hand side of this equation, you will see we'll have the central differencing which is applied on the second order differential. Why we are applying this all discretization schemes? Because we have want to linearize the differential form. They cannot be directly solved. So they must be made in the form of algebraic equation. So you can see we are not changing the time levels, but we only changing the I levels, which is the increments in the x direction. So I is representing you the x coordinate, and it will, as I already show you, it as the central differencing when it will be applicable, it will have the information of your I plus one. Uh, you grid at I plus one, then at I and I minus one. So by rearranging this equation and solve for n plus one, then this algebraic form will be created. There you can see, if you try to understand the physical meaning of this particular algebraic equation, we will have Ti, which is at I level, and this equation is getting the information for the next level. And on its right hand side, all the equations are n level, means at previous time step level. Let's say you have a one bar which is at a 25, which is at a 20 degrees Celsius initially, and then you applied one heat source on one of its end, and at that particular end you have created 100 degrees Celsius at temperature, and you also applied another source on the another end which is maintained at a 25 degrees Celsius. So initially you have the all the whole of the rod at its different discrete points at a 20 degrees Celsius. So with respect to the time, its temperature will increase. So accordingly, we have to solve the problem for the next time levels. So explicit method and implicit method, we have the two time marching methods, which will give you the track of the temperature with respect to the time. Let's say this graphical information will indicate you, let's say at initial stage, at initial condition, let's say bar is at 20 degrees Celsius. So if you have the information at this level for all the I values with respect to the length at discrete points, the values will be like say 20 degrees Celsius. So you will be able to get the value for the temperature at the next time level. Let's say the previous this equation is by taking I as a 3, and this right hand side you can see this will become, this is in taking the information of your cell at location number 4 and 3 and 2, and giving the information of the Ti, making the correspondent and solving it for the n plus 1 level by taking the information from the previous time level. So likewise we have implicit method. Okay, let me show you the graphical representation of this. If you have the information at the previous time level at different nodal points, then at the same time for the next time level you will have the corresponding values. If you have the value earlier known initial value which is known at the 6 grid points, so simultaneously for the 6 grid points at the next time level can be calculated using the implicit method. So it saves the time. At the same time, uh, same number of algebraic equations will be solved, which is for the previous time step. But in the case of explicit method, you can see it takes the information from the three previous time levels. It would take the information from the previous time level for the different grid points, and then only give you one value for the next time level. So accordingly, for this one, it has to take the value from these three, then it give this one. For this one, let's say for 5 at the next time level, it will require the information of 4, 5, and 6 at the previous time level, then it will give the value at the next time level. Likewise, for 6, it will require information of its initial state at 5, 6, and 7, then it can reveal the value for 6. So it one step one it has to be taken to finally give you the value for the different nodes. It is very time consuming, but more accurate compared to the implicit method. So what we do in implicit method, we are taking the average between the two time levels and then creating the algebraic equations in such a way. On the right hand side, we are keeping all the values, all the temporal terms for n plus 1 label, and again, like for the explicit method, we are keeping them for the n level. And still, it is taking the information at n plus 1, I plus 1, I, and I minus 1 level. And at the same time, there will be same number of algebraic equations. Like say, there will be three equations now. They will be available at I minus 1, I plus 1. Similarly, here also at previous time step level, I plus 1, I, and I minus 1, they are available. So there will be a set of Liouville equations which are equal for the both of the time levels, and they can be only solved by using such kind of matrix solution methods like TDMA, Gauss elimination method to give you the solution at the same time. So as well, we already discussed about the stability. So discretization error has to be removed, and the round of error has to be removed. And as a stability criteria for the conduction equation, we use this diffusion constant, which is alpha, delta t, and delta x square, which comes in the diffusion equation while we rearrange the equation. It will be clear here. Okay. So this particular combination, which is alpha delta t by delta x square, which is taking the time step as well as the increment in the x direction, it must be less than 0.5 to give you the proper solution. While you are doing any transit simulation on the commercial products, like, then also you must understand what should be the time step you have to keep in your problem, and what should be the size of the grid. So this combination finally should be less than or equal to 0.5. So to make you better understanding of this all, I am taking the case of a bar, which I am discussing many times. I have mentioned it. Let's say the bar is at 100 degrees Celsius on its left side, and at this side it is at 25 degrees Celsius, and initially everywhere it is at 20 degrees Celsius. And we are taking the one-dimensional heat conduction equation or diffusion equation. And for this temporal term, we have to apply the forward difference method. It takes this form, that will be j plus 1 or j. And j is representing you the time level. And for second order differential, we have to apply the central differencing, that at the same time, you will take the samples information at I minus 1, I, or I plus 1 level. So let's say that lambda is showing you the diffusion constant, and involving the value of alpha, delta t, and delta x square. Let's say we have kept delta t as a 3 second and delta x as a 0.01, and finally this lambda is 0.42. It must be less than 0.5. We are keeping this as a less than 0.5, and this is the earlier information. So we have one boundary condition. Boundary condition means that will be applied on the boundaries or on the faces in case of three-dimensional geometry. So here for var we have one point which will be taking the boundary condition, and one of the left end of this var is 100 degrees Celsius, another one right end is at 25 degrees Celsius, and inner node all are at 20 degrees Celsius. So by taking this form of the explicit, that comes from the after applying the explicit method on the diffusion equation. So we have this form of the equation. So there I already mentioned, it is giving you the value correspond to the I level for n plus 1 level, or for the next time level. Here j is representing the next time level, and by taking the information of I minus 1, I plus 1, I of the previous time level. So here at previous time level, we have initially everywhere for node 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 20 degrees Celsius the initial value. You will see now there for this one 20, 20, 20, and 100, because it is taking the information of this one. If we solve for the, let's say if I for 1, so from this equation, it must take the value for I0, I, and I2 to give the solution for the next time label correspond to 1. At the previous time label, it must have the information. It must take the information at I minus 1, that will be 0, I1, and I plus 1, means at 2. These three values will be taken, and then we will have the value for uh, correspond to I1 at the next time level. Likewise, if for the next time level at correspond to 2, we want to get the value, then it must take the value of I1, I2, and I3 at previous time level. So you can see now this value and then 20 and 20. They are the value of the temperature at these nodes at the initial time level. So likewise, this value will be first for the first 3 seconds at a delta t at the time step. This only two values has been replaced, which are at 1 and 4, because they both have taken the value from the boundary conditions. Boundary conditions are available at node I0 and I5, because to make the value correspond to 4, it has taken the value of this one, this node, and this node. And this node, it was 25. That's why there's increment. There's a little bit increment in the value from 20 degrees Celsius from its initial state. And here you can see there's a 53 degrees Celsius now, which replaced its earlier value, which was 20, because this happens because of this 100 degrees Celsius. Likewise, now this will become this all value will be distributed now on this label, and we will do the calculation for the next time step, which will be the 6 seconds, and then you will see now almost all values has been replaced compared to the initial state. And then finally, if you see at time level, time step 9 seconds, or after 9 seconds of the time, then we'll see almost all the values has been changed accordingly, and giving you one kind of slope. So if you present them graphically, then see for first 3 seconds we have this curvature, and for 6 seconds now it is showing the different trend, and for 9 seconds now this is the final trend. Accordingly, if we do some more iteration for more time, then there will be one straight line that comes from here to. So this we already have discussed earlier. So how we can apply the different boundary conditions like Dirichlet, Neumann, and Robin or mixed boundary condition, that all depend upon the understanding of your physical domain. And while you have to transfer the physical domain to the computational domain, this information is priorly required. And what will be the initial condition? Like say here we have applied the initial condition. We are giving the initial state of the system. We are taking the initial value of the system as a temperature. So let's say any of the wall will be at a 20 degrees Celsius at the initial temperature. According to boundary condition, we are making one boundary condition like 100 degrees Celsius on one of the wall, 25 degrees Celsius on another wall, like this. So they are boundary conditions that will be only applicable by understanding the physical system. So this is a representation. I think I already have discussed this particularly, where the blue one is showing you the boundary control volumes or boundary grid points, and this yellow one is showing you the inner ones, and how they can be. Okay, so if distance between the two grid points has to be calculated, it can be derived like this. The L1 will be the length in the x direction, and like say I max minus 2 will be the location of the inner nodes. Accordingly, we can get the delta x. It means that if you have a length L, then how many number of nodes you want, accordingly you can split the whole of the computation domain in horizontal lines or vertical lines, and you can get the distance between two grid points. Likewise, surface area, it will be delta x and delta y, and volume will be delta x and delta y for a two-dimensional space, for a two-dimensional problem. Now, Dr. Manoj, I am audible? Hello, Dr. Manoj.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So now I will tell you how to
Yes, sir,
apply.
you are audible.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I'm going to discuss how to apply finite volume method. Earlier formulation was as per the finite difference method, and okay. So we have the diffusion equation, and it can be written like this: on the basis of rate of change of internal energy. This first term is showing you representing you the rate of change of internal energy. Second is heat gained by conduction plus generation. So we have written this in this form, and where heat conduction is actually flux which is entering at this phase and leaving from this phase, and difference of it, because heat gain we are calculating, so it will be out minus in. While we have to count the loss, then it will be in minus out, like. So let's say the flux which is normal to the y, so it is also coming out from the another phase at a by taking increment of delta y in the same direction. So this we call uh, okay. So this is the further representation of this differential equation. So here this is the first temporal term with the rate of change of internal energy, and the second one is the rate of change of flux with respect to the location, and it is finally taking the form like k del square t by del x square plus del square t by del y square, which we all know the form of the heat equation. So how it will be solved using the finite volume method? We'll try to discuss. Let's say I have taken this as a control volume. So this for this control volume, what we have to identify? We have to identify its value at the next time level. And for this particularly, and this is correspond to the first term, which is unsteady term. This is correspond to the second order differential. So there, what we'll try to understand, we always take the flux. Let's say heat flux will be incident or normal to this phase, and it is leaving the control for surface at a distance delta x. Likewise, in the y direction, it is leaving at a delta y distance. So we have to count the gain. So finally, for this control volume, in order to make it energy balance, it will be heat flux at this phase minus, oh, sorry, heat flux at this phase minus this flux. And this is for the volumetric heat generation. So we can also write this equation in this form, where we have applied the forward difference method for the temporal term for this term, and we are simply writing Q conduction and Q generation, where Q conduction will be the heat gain due to the conduction. The heat gain due to conduction we can calculate like for flux which is coming out from this phase minus flux which is entering at this phase. So this flux further can be discretized. So this particularly we call the first level of approximation, where we are only writing them simply in the form of the flux differences, and they can be f I'm using here to represent west and south phase. Here we have west and south phase, and for this end it is E and N. E and N is indicating you east and north phase. So here we can see this fluxes also can be expanded and on the basis of your subsidiary laws. Subsidiary law like here is the Fourier's law of heat conduction. You know heat flux will be like K delta T by delta X. Here S is earlier representing as the area, but it is representing here as a X for two-dimensional space. So this E is representing you now the heat flux at the uh, this edge center. What actually we are doing on the to formulate the solution as per the FEM technique, we are keeping all the fluxes at the edge centers. Let's say this is your whole computational domain. It is divided in at present in five grids or control volumes as per the physical understanding of the problem. And then flux is always will be applicable at the surfaces. So they are kept at the, let's say this is the control volume. So this flux will be applied here only because this is the flux term. It will be available, it can be applied only at the area or in the edge for this particular problem. And volumetric heat generation that will be inside at this point. That will be one of the volumetric phenomena. So likewise, we are keeping the fluxes at the center of the edges on in all the directions like east, west, north, south, and calibrating them accordingly. And for them, the temperature, which is our desire in this particular case to be get solved, we are keeping them at the cell centers. So first level of approximation is indicating us what is conduction. Conduction is simply the flux which is entering at this phase minus flux leaving at this phase, which is indicating us in gain, like which is entering at this phase and leaving this phase. On the basis of that, we have written this one. And in second order approximation, what we are doing, we are expanding the heat flux on the basis of subsidiary law, Forest law of heat conduction, like K delta T by delta X. And let's say for flux at E at the east phase, how do we calculate it? By taking the value of the east cell to the previous cell. Or this is also P is representing here the central point. This is a central, this is a common point for north phase, south phase, even for the west phase. So here QE for the east phase can be calculated like temperature difference between this cell center and this cell center. We are resting the temperature at the yellow circles. And from there we are calculating the flux. Likewise, for the flux in the west phase, for this particularly, we must take the difference between Tp minus Tw. For this south phase, it will be the difference of Tp and Ts. For the north phase, the difference of Tp and Tn. So we will now put this all here in this equation, which is further give you this form. First term is the unstudied term, which is the rate of change of heat energy, and this is heat gain by conduction. This is heat generation. So while it will be solved, it gives you this form, which we already have seen, almost a similar form that we have derived from the FDM, and here we have this form from FPM. So this particularly is going to be solved for n+1 level by taking the information for a two-dimensional problem of its east, west, north, south cell centers on previous time level. N is representing you previous time level, n+1 is showing you the next time level. So in a more generalized form, it can be represented by taking some of the coefficients like A. So after solving this, now this takes this form. A Tpn plus 1 means this is temporal term. It will give us the temperature in the next time label by taking the value of all east, west, north, south at the previous time level, and with some constants. There will be some of the constants, and this one also. So now this is the graphical representation for a two-dimensional problem now. As per the knowledge, as per the understanding of explicit method, we will have the track of the east, west, north cell, then only one value at the next time level will be calculated correspond to the P. P will be the central common point. This P will be the central common point. For the same, the value will be interpolated for the next time label by taking the values of these all north, east, west, south at previous time level. And implicit method, simultaneously same values can be transferred to the next level. So you can see at for this particularly n plus 1 label, and here also the equations are at n plus 1 levels. By taking some of the constant, they will be taking the some values at n level. So what advantage we have in explicit method? It will be relatively simple to set up the program. Disadvantage is result in long computer times to make calculations over a given interval of time. As I mentioned, it takes the value from the all the information from the previous time level, then only give one value correspond to the p or central point at the next time level, where simultaneously as if the information is available at all the nodes at previous time level, they can be equally transformed to the next time level in implicit method. So considerably fewer time steps to make calculations over a given time interval. And disadvantage is computer time per time step is much larger. And for transient problem, this method may not be as accurate as an explicit approach. So in most of your commercial methods, commercial ZBD tools, we generally have the explicit solution available with the software. So grid point for heat fluxes and temperature. Now I'm going to introduce you the one algorithm. After that, I will show you one code on the basis of this particular methodology. So I and j I'm taking here to represent the x or y coordinates, and this particular green rectangle is showing you the flux at the wall. And this is actually the physical understanding of the problem. Flux is always will be available at the faces. So this red triangle is indicating you the flux at the uh, in the y direction, and here they will be graphically represented like. So they are the fluxes in the x direction, there are fluxes in the y direction. And these yellow circles, they are the cell centers where temperature has to kept, and for that we have to carry out the solution. And these circles are indicating you the boundary nodes where we have to apply the boundary condition. Let's say how it will can be implemented in the form of a code. So we have a pseudo code for a two-dimensional unsteady state conduction problem or diffusion problem. First step involved, we have to define the metrics in your code. For that, let's say we have a for inner nodes, we have a matrix which is starting from 2 jmax minus 1, or for in the extraction, it is starting from 1 to imax minus 1. And then we have to calculate the delta x, which is the distance between the two cells. Distance between the two cells we have to identify now. So that can be taken as x cell distance, which is at I plus 1 or minus I level, difference between the two cell centers, because we already have defined the matrix accordingly. So finally now we will calculate the fluxes. So flux as per the subsidiary law, information provided by the subsidiary law, it will be k delta t by delta x. So delta t here will be, if you apply the forward differencing, then I plus 1 minus I and delta x. Likewise for y, and then conduction we have to solve. Conduction will be the difference of the fluxes, that will the heat gain, means that the flux entering from, let's say, from the left side and leaving from the right side, difference between these two. So likewise we have written it for x, and this is for y. And finally the algebraic equation that we have uh, generated from by applying the explicit method on the conduction equation. So this particularly gives us the solution. So what are the steps? Earlier we have to define the length, give the information about the matrix as per the x or y coordinates. We have to apply the boundary conditions, and we have to also state the initial conditions. We have to generate the control volumes, and then we have to define one old matrix. For that, first we will carry out the solution that will be earlier taken on the basis of temperature, where we will define the initial conditions, and then all the new values will be stored again back to the old, and then we can make one convergence criteria uh, between the root mean square for the temperature, for the difference between the two states of the temperature, for the next time level or the previous time level. Then we will set one error, and accordingly it will be solved. While this satisfy the error, code will stop. Okay. So this is the graphical representation. Likewise, we can obtain from the code. So before to jump on the next problem, I would like to show you one code. Let's say this is a code which is developed for one-dimensional heat conduction. So first step is we have to provide the input, means all the geometric dimensions or initial boundary conditions we have to apply. So first what we are doing, we are giving the user input information rho, CP, K, L will be the length here, maximum number of grids will be there, like 12 in the x direction or y. So it is one dimension, so only x direction has to grid, maximum number of grids we have to only give in the x direction. So volumetric heat generation we are taking this, and error we are taking 10 to minus 3, minus 4. So now next step will be geometrical parameters and stability criteria. So stability criteria for diffusion equation will be the diffusion constant. It will be alpha delta T by delta x square. So that must be less than 0.5 that we have to ensure. So from there we are already ensuring it. And the next step will be initial and boundary conditions. So initial condition for all the inner nodes, we have to ensure that it must be at initial temperature. So initial temperature we are taking T0 means 30, and west wall temperature we are taking at a 0, and east wall temperature we are taking as a 100 degrees Celsius. So there is a one bar, like say same kind of problem, which is at on east at 100 degrees Celsius, and on its west it is at 0, and all the inner nodes initially at 30 degrees. So accordingly now, further we first have to provide the coordinates for the faces, and then coordinate of the cell centers. So this is all the mathematical representation. Actually, we have to get the coordinates in the x directions. So this particularly has for that, and then this is the stability criteria. This is finally the convergence criteria we are writing here. We are setting unsteadiness 1. When this will be reached, then code will stop. And although we are using two criteria here, one is for unsteadiness, while this particularly this absolute difference between the new temperature and old will satisfy the convergence of epsilon, which is 10 to minus 4, then this code will stop. So what earlier we have do in order to make iteration, we are making one matrix for T old and making it equivalent to T, and the T is actually the initial temperature earlier we have defined. And then the equation which is finally written that we have obtained from the Actus method also for the T, and we are making it a function of I. So each time there will be increment in the I, and the next time step will be called accordingly. Now finally difference will be taken, and we will have the results. Let me run it for you guys. So this first presentation is about the cells. So these cells, earlier it was shown with the yellow color. They are the cell centers, and these rectangles are showing you the flux terms, which are calculated on the basis of difference between the two temperatures. And this is applicable for one-dimensional problem. And let's say the result we have, this end we kept at 0, this end we kept at 100 degrees Celsius. Earlier notes at initially at 30 degrees Celsius. Because of that, this is the temperature profile. So going back to the PPT again. So now I will jump to the advection. This is really important. If you're able to understand the solution of this one, then same methodology will be applicable to the momentum equation also. There also we have the advection term and as well as diffusion terms. So advection, we only have the one effect. Let's say the air is flowing from the left to right, then the effect on the left will be only experienced by the human. If it is going from right to left, then only that effect has to be experienced by the human. So in diffusion, we also have the both of the effects. So I'm skipping them because we have less time left. Okay, directly coming on the advection. So advection, if you remember our terms, the first term is uh, del rho u by del t plus it will be rho c p with respect to the x and with respect to the y coordinates. We have the advection terms in the energy equation. So how they will be solved? So for the temporal terms, oh sorry, for the first will be rate of change of internal energy, and this will be the rate of change off because of the enthalpy imparted to the system, which is of energy which is coming with the fluid flow to the control volume. That particularly we have to solve. Now, first temporal term will remain as it is for the earlier case and takes the same form. And for advection now, we have to solve the enthalpy fluxes. Enthalpy here will be represented like MCP delta T. So delta T will be the difference between the two cell centers. So let's say enthalpy flux is entering at to this control volume at this control surface and leaving the control volume at this control surface. So the difference will be the actual difference between the two cells, two control surfaces, and represented here like MCP delta T in the form of enthalpy, like for a discrete points. So by taking this in the y direction also, so this form of the equation will be generated for the Q advection. Then we have MCPT, F will be again west and south faces, S will be the area, and we again will count the gain, and we will minus from where the enthalpy fluxes are leaving the control surfaces, like we have earlier done for the heat conduction. The flux is heat flux which is entering from one of the face and leaving from the one of the face. This is also the first level approximation, but in advection particularly, okay, second level of approximation is done with the help of interpolation and extrapolation procedures. So what are these interpolation extrapolation procedures we have available in the advection scheme? So we have upstream, we have upper wind scheme, we have second order, first order wind scheme, second order wind scheme, then we have quick standard differencing, which are also available in your commercial softwares. While you set up a simple algorithm to solve pressure and velocity simultaneously, then we need to solve our advection terms for energy and momentum. Then if you click on there, you will find these are available, even though power law is also available there, but they are the generally uh, teaching our courses. So first is upwind scheme. Okay, as you know, as the nature of the advection is only one effect will be experienced by the human. Like say if it at the center between the ice and the fire, because they will the bulk movement of the fluid. So let's say if air is flowing in this direction, so this particularly will experience only the coldness. So value in case of in order to solve the advection term, the value of the previous at this particular time step, at the previous time step at this particular node will be directly transferred to the next.
Dr. Satyendra, you are not audible. Dr. Satyendra, you are not audible, please. Sir, unmute your mic, please.
Okay, I am audible now.
Yes, sir. It's audible.
Hello. Okay, okay. Yes. So in this advection scheme, we have like say linear, quadratic, or cubic interpolation also, where we are transferring the weights for the or weightage for the neighboring nodes. Neighboring nodes will be the downstream. Neighboring nodes will be the downstream one. It can be the upstream. It can be the further upstream. From there, we have to get the values. And because in your flux terms here only, the equation is MCPT, means M will be constant, Cp will be constant, then T has to be calculated. That has to be calculated on the basis of by providing some weightage of the temperature which are already available in the form of initial boundary conditions at different locations. So likewise, we have the second order upper wind scheme. There, what we are doing, we are using a linear equation, and accordingly by using some boundary conditions now is finally taking this form. There it is assigning the weightage if we have to find out the flux at this particular location at this edge center. Then what it is assigning? It is assigning the 3 by 2 1.5% weightage to the upstream node temperature and 0.5 to the downstream temperature. Likewise, in the quick scheme, this is using one algebraic equation of second order, and it is giving the different weightage to the different nodes as per D will be the downstream, it will be upstream, it will be the further upstream. So accordingly, different weightage is provided in order to calculate the fluxes. I mean to say because flux in the advection is MCPT, so T has to be calculated. For that, we have to provide the value by taking the weight by giving some multiplier that will be weightage actually for the different nodes. So in first order of wind, direct value has to be provided. If air is flowing in this direction, this value has to be given directly to the flux. If air is flowing in this direction, like say this value directly has to be to the flux for the calculation. So this will be important. In the first order upper winds, same value has to be transferred linearly for the calculation of flux at the center. Or in the center, it will be a difference between average between the two temperatures that has to be given to the calculation of this E, and likewise for SOU and for the quick, different weight it has to be sent. So implementation detail. Likewise, earlier form we again have to apply the implicit or explicit method, and it takes this form. Then we have to find out the fluxes, and this is the temporal term, and this is the advection flux. And for in explicit method, it will be solved for n plus 1, and by keeping all the n terms on the right hand side. Lecture on this last slide. So how to implement this in the code? First, we have to define the matrix, and then mass fluxes has to be calculated, and then directly advection fluxes has to be calculated, which are simply the difference between from where the flux is entering and enthalpy flux is entering. Thank you, Manoj. I will stop my lecture here.